A few years ago, in November, was the first time I saw the black-eyed children. Their eyes were like looking far into a black, dark cave. Their skin was a pale white as they floated outside the window. I got lost in the blackness of those eyes. I've had a few nightmares that I couldn't remember now. I woke up abruptly, my heart beating very loud and fast, drenched in sweat. It had scared me thoroughly, but I couldn't quite remember the details. Now sitting up in my bed, I stared over at my 6-year-old son. "Scott, there's no need to be afraid. Monsters aren't real," I said, night after night with little effect. But that was a lie, wasn't it? There's a lot to be afraid of. Every night was the same. Since his mother had died in a horrific accident, I would tuck him in and kiss him on the cheek. "Do you promise to stay in your own room tonight?" "Yes, Daddy." I would walk, half asleep, to my own room, close the door, crawl into my bed, and fall asleep. Without a doubt, Scott would be next to me asleep when I'd wake up. I obviously thought it was natural after losing his mother suddenly, until the children began to visit on a nightly basis, and Scott's nightmares started. I was sure I was dreaming the first night I saw them. My bed was very close to the window, and my son was hiding beneath it. The children reached their arms through the opening between the bed and wall, and were extremely close to grabbing my son. I didn't have time to scream. I rushed over to Scott and slammed the window shut. "Daddy," Scott had said, maybe having just woken from his own nightmare. Before he had a chance to see the children, I closed the blinds and curtains, then quickly pressed my back against the window. This is what I previously did. Every night I'd close and lock the windows, then shut the curtains, then blinds, so it was difficult to see anything outside. I explained to Scott that we were safe from any danger if the windows were locked and blinds shut, and it became routine. It was a couple of nights later. I peered through the blinds and saw the children, pale as ever, in the same spot that they had been the first night. I once again became lost in their eyes, and I saw them look past me and to my boy. "No, you're not having him," I angrily whispered, coming back to my senses and closing the blinds. As time went on, Scott's nightmares were more frequent. "Dad, at night I sometimes see things," Scott said, terror washing over him. I quickly interrupted him. "I know, don't worry. They can't get to you." He was crying as he looked up at me. "You swear?" Tears began to flow down my cheeks then as I hugged him tight. "I swear." As I cuddled him, I looked toward the window and couldn't see the children, but I knew they were around. After a few months, Scott felt brave enough to sleep in his own room again. "I want to be brave, Daddy." He stopped and looked at me. "They can't get to me, can they?" I didn't know how to respond as I thought about it. I'd boarded and sealed his bedroom window, so there was absolutely no way anything was getting through that. Plus, I wanted Scott to feel confident again when he was alone. "Okay." I set up a camera with a live feed in the corner of his room, overlooking the bed and where the window should be, before letting him stay in there. I didn't want anything to make him scared or break his confidence. I tested the camera, then I went to tuck him in. Kissing him on the cheek, my boy hugged me. "I'm not afraid anymore, Daddy," he said. I was extremely proud of my son. He had so much to deal with, actual monsters and the loss of his mum, and yet here he was willing to face it all head on. "I'm really proud of you," I whispered gently. I didn't sleep that night. I just kept watching the camera feed, just in case. Nothing happened for a good few hours, so I decided to quickly go to the toilet. I will regret that decision for the rest of my life. I was no more than 20 seconds when... "Daddy!" Scott screamed, making me almost soak myself in water from the tap. "Scott!" I screamed back, running to his room. "Hang on!" I shouted urgently, just outside his room. When I kicked the door open, my heart stopped. Scott was gone, his bed completely empty. "Scott! Scott!" I screamed, searching desperately for him. The window was still sealed and boarded off, but my son was gone. He was never found. The police suspected me but couldn't prove anything. A week later, as I was tidying up, I found Scott's old drawings from before he disappeared. There weren't any dead children at the window, and no black eyes. There was something completely different. If you ever see the black-eyed children floating outside your window, they're not monsters. They're here to warn us. Don't make the same mistake as me. I hope one day that I can find my son again. I look at Scott's drawing pad. That's when I notice. He'd drawn his bedroom. The window was sealed and boarded off. Scott peacefully sleeping, and the wardrobe door is open slightly. A large clawed hand is reaching through the crack towards his bed.